So it wasn't pretty, it wasn't a classic, but it was tight, and England get the job done against Wales at Twickenham. A couple of hours on from the full-time whistle, Twickenham is empty. I can vaguely hear the bars and everything outside the stadium, which are still chock-a-block, but England are 2 from 2 to start the 2024 Six Nations. Wales are 2 from 2 in terms of defeats, but once again, we'll have positives to take out from it. Welcome back to the channel. My name's Alfie. Let me know what you made of it. Comment down below. What do you make of where both of these teams are at the moment? There are still so many unknowns. I think there are still plenty of question marks over both of them, but I think there's interesting discussions to be had as well. So do let me know, like the video and subscribe to the channel as well. As I say, from an English point of view, it's a case of they got the job done. It's not particularly pretty at the moment. They're not making huge strides forwards, but they are improving. And once again, they've had a game where they were losing at half-time and they were able to turn it around, particularly in the second half, I think tactically being pretty astute and doing some quite nice stuff, even though it wasn't necessarily the free-flowing, amazing attacking rugby that a lot of fans might like to see at the moment. So I'm not too down on England. I'm interested to see what the reaction is going to be like, because a week ago after the Italy game, I was expecting it to be very negative because only a 3-point win against Italy, but I think a lot of fans actually looked at what England were trying to do in attack and in defence and cut them some slack because they could appreciate where they're trying to get to. I wonder whether it's going to be the same after this game, because it was at home, it's against Wales, who are improving, and I'll get onto them in just a moment, but are not by any means the best team in the Six Nations at the moment. So I wonder what the reaction will be. As I say, I'm not going to flip from one week to the next and hammer England. I think there's clearly loads to work on, but once again, we've seen some really positive signs. I mentioned it, the fact that they were down at half-time, but I just think, again, tactically, how they changed things up in the second half. They went to the kicking game. George Ford, that 50-22 was ridiculous, and a key moment as well, because from that, the Mason Grady yellow card comes, the penalty to give them the lead came from that phase of play, and Freddie Stewart in the air as well was absolutely exceptional. And it's another second half where defensively they've been much better as well. Wales didn't score a point in the second 40 minutes. Italy, that was almost the case last week if it wasn't for that try right at the end. So for the time being, I'm sticking with the positives for England. They have to get better. I think some of the challenges that they are faced with going into the rest of this tournament are fascinating, because they've got Scotland away, they've got Ireland here at Twickenham, and then they've got France away on the final weekend. The 3 toughest fixtures, all sides that are better than Italy and Wales. Where are this England team at the moment, and where can they get to, in particular with a rest week coming up, to prepare themselves for those matches? Because I said at the start of this Six Nations, I think 3 wins and closing the gap to France and Ireland would be a good result for England. It's a possibility now, but you've also got to accept it's narrow wins over Wales and over Italy. So I think there's lots for England fans to feel positive about. I still think it's going to take an element of patience, and don't get me wrong, I fully appreciate that no one is going to be bowled over just yet. There will still be a lot of question marks about this team, but the penalty count was pretty good again. I thought they were unlucky, by the way, with the conversion charge down on George Ford in the mix zone just now. Actually, he was really interesting, and I mean, as measured as he could be, kind of said that he felt it was a ridiculous call from the referee. He just kind of shuffled to his side rather than starting his run up. So overall from England, yeah, I suppose it's okay. They're 2 from 2. They've won their first 2 games. The big challenges are now coming up against Scotland, Ireland and France. In terms of a Welsh perspective, brilliant opening 40 minutes. I don't think they conceded a penalty in that first half, which is unheard of. They did a great job of absorbing the England pressure in the first 10 minutes, because England were right on top for the opening 10 minutes of the game. Henry Slade knocked on, I think, close to the try line, and then after that Wales managed to get a bit more of a foothold, and they were able to cause England some problems in that first half as well, a bit like we saw last week for England against Italy, when that blitz defence, you see at times it's excellent, it's pushing teams backwards, but you are able to get through it. That Alex Mann try was excellent. And you think of this Welsh team, and Warren Gatland said this in the press conference afterwards, he thinks they are going to be a really, really good team eventually. It might take them some time to get there, but you can see the foundations that are in place. Their discipline in the first half, excellent, leading away to England at Twickenham, but they just let it slip away. And I think it was probably, a lot of it at least, down to experience, because once again, the bench for England had a big, big impact in terms of the players that came on. Danny Kerr, very good. Chandler Cunningham himself was excellent. And I think maybe Wales don't quite have that at the moment. This is a young team that is growing, that is developing, and will learn a huge amount of lessons from the 2 defeats they've had, but you can see where they're heading and the direction they're heading. And Gatland spoke about that in the press conference, says he hopes the Welsh public stick with them. He can see what they're trying to do. He can see where this team could potentially be in a few years' time. And actually they've proven, I think they've proven a lot of people wrong. They have had 2 defeats, admittedly, but 2 much closer defeats, 2 games that they could have easily won to start this Six Nations. And they were absolutely gutted by the result in the end, but I think experience was pretty key. I suppose just going back to England, it made me remember it, chatting about Chandler Cunningham himself. I thought it was interesting that he came on for Sam Underhill. Again, just looking at the way that England tactically tweaked things in that second half. They essentially had 2 sixes on at that period. They were big, they were physical, they were kicking it a lot. They reverted to a type of game plan that got the job done, ultimately. So whilst the attacking game they're implementing isn't exactly tearing things up at the moment, they are trying to develop that, and they still have this game to fall back on to get a result when they're up against it, like they were today. And I suppose the one final thing for England is, last week against Italy, this week against Wales, how long ago would it have been that is a game that this England team would have ended up losing? And I think there's a good case to say, certainly this Wales game, they wouldn't have necessarily been able to get themselves back into it. They'd have ended up chasing the game. That's when you make mistakes. Wales might have built their lead, and then it's even harder to get themselves on the winning side of it. They've been able to do that. Now they can move forward into the rest of this Six Nations. For Wales, what do you say? I mean, they've got some pretty tough tests coming up as well. I think that game against Italy on the final weekend, there's a massive, that's potentially going to be a huge game. Unless Wales have a massive upset between now and then, that is going to be a huge game for both of those teams on the final weekend. Fascinating matchup as well. But they have shown life. I think Gatland overall will be pretty pleased with what he's seen from his team. Yes, they've come out on the wrong side of it, but once again, they've shown guts, they've been in the game, they have exceeded probably a lot of people's expectations. So those are my kind of general thoughts from here at Twickenham. Let me know what you made of it. Do you kind of agree with me with England that patience, give it time, let's give them the opportunity to get better? Or are you already looking at this and thinking it's 2 narrow defeats that could have easily been losses against who we think most likely are the 2 weakest teams in the competition in Italy and Wales? And from a Welsh perspective, Welsh fans, where are you with this? Better than expected despite losing both games? Interestingly as well, actually, something else that Gatland mentioned was the regions need to start winning more. He felt like it's a team at the moment that a lot of those players are not used to winning regularly. And when you look at 2 really narrow defeats, maybe that has an impact as well, when they're not players that are in the habit of winning games, which I thought was quite an interesting point. I'll leave it there. Comment down below, let me know what you made of it. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that stuff, and I'll see you in the next one.